My name is Audrey Wright, and I am the Associate Concertmaster of the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. It is my pleasure to bring to you a new series I'm creating of online tutorials called An Excerpt a Day. Now, in this series, I will be exploring various violin orchestral audition excerpts and kind of going through my approach to playing these pieces and preparing them for auditions. Now, I want to just mention that in sharing my approach to working on this music, you know, I'm sharing a lot of my own personal experience with working on these pieces for years and years, as well as, you know, it's really a combination of that and what others have shared with me about their experience with this music. So, you know, like with all music that we work on as musicians, preparing excerpts is really about taking from as many different sources, right? Kind of acting like a sponge and trying to gather as much information, useful information of how to work on a piece of music and how to execute it and how to perform it well and comfortably, and then you kind of you take all the information and then you form your own method for making it work for you. So as I give you my kind of approach and what works for me, please take whatever works for you and combine that with other things you may have heard from your teachers, your colleagues, other videos you might have watched online, and find an approach that feels right to you for this music. Now, the first video, the first excerpt that I'll be exploring is Strauss's Don Juan. And let's see, I put out a question to Instagram not too long ago asking folks what excerpts they would be interested in hearing. And it is totally not surprising that Don Juan was at the very top of the list. It is such a devilishly difficult excerpt, both technically and musically. So there's a lot to work on. There's a lot to kind of get into with this piece. So the format that I'll use for all of these videos is I'll first go through and play the excerpt in its entirety, and then kind of go back into more detail and work on little details throughout the entire piece. So here is Don Juan. This is the first violin part, the first page. Enjoy. excerpt through. So now I'm going to go through the piece in a little bit more detail. So with all excerpts, excerpts that I work on, whether it's something new or I'm returning to a piece that I've played before, I like to start off with the question, what is this excerpt trying to portray? What is the purpose of this little sliver of music, since we can't play an entire movement or piece, of course, in an audition setting. In the case of Don Juan, I like to think of 4 specific areas of focus. These are areas that an audition committee in an actual audition will most likely be paying attention to and listening out for as the kind of reason for having a violinist play this piece on an audition. So the first area of focus is impeccable rhythm. There are so many different intricate rhythms written into the music that we have to pay attention to. It's really important to maintain a really strong sense of pulse. There are lots of rests in this excerpt, which you don't always find in excerpts. So timing and rhythm are extremely important in Don Juan. Second area of focus is, of course, great intonation. Now that kind of goes without saying, but this piece in particular, since it utilizes the entire kind of range of the instrument, there are definitely some very tricky spots that audition committees are generally listening out for and hoping that a violinist will nail. So I'll go through some of the key areas and ways that I approach those to get the best intonation that I can. Third area of focus is attention to detail. I'm talking about musical detail like dynamics and articulation, and there are a lot of these little nuances in this piece that can make the music pop, right? We can be playing, you know, all of the notes flawlessly, the rhythm, you know, perfectly, but if we're leaving out these little minute details, the piece doesn't quite come alive. And that brings me to the fourth area of focus, which is related to the previous one, and that is character, right? We have to be bringing out all sorts of extremes in character with this piece. And that's also related to sound and how we approach sound for it to really sound like Strauss, right? And that's really the musical aspect of this excerpt. And as much as this is a technical excerpt, it's also a musical one. So I'll be incorporating all of those areas of focus into my comments as I kind of go through the piece in more detail now. All right, so I figured I'd start from the beginning, because why not? So this opening should be big, it should be bold, it should be heroic and full of life. And while this is a tutti excerpt, you want to think soloistically, especially in this opening, so that you really capture your listener's attention. I like to start the opening from the string a little bit above the middle of the bow. This kind of gives me the best leverage in terms of getting as much clarity as I can out of those opening 16th notes. Now, the notes don't start on the downbeat, but I actually like to think of it in a way as starting from the downbeat. There's almost, I give that opening G a little punch, a little accent, just so that it kind of, there's clarity from the very first note. And really holding those 16th notes, the tendency is often to want to kind of rush through, perhaps in a musical attempt to make a longer line, or perhaps because it's a very terrifying opening and very exposed, of course. So really think of holding that rhythm. You want to hear every single 16th note, and really kind of starting from the string with a nice attack. Kind of like this. So if you can hear when I I play that, I'm really punching out every single 16th note in that opening run. And that sets up a really strong sense of rhythm as I continue on. So I'll, starting it from the beginning, and then now you can hear how I'm going to open up this phrase as I go to the very bottom, from the very bottom rather, to the top. And once I hit that top B, B natural up in the stratosphere up here, I want you to hear how I allow my sound to open up. You want to be thinking in this as much as possible physically and musically to let your sound expand to the back of whatever your space, whatever space you're playing in, whether it's a hall or a small auditorium or even a room. You want your sound to carry the phrase through. So what I'm really doing is making sure that I'm not tensing up physically in any way. I'm really trying to kind of open up my shoulders here and let the sound just kind of be warm and big and open towards that top. Now going on from here, rhythm is super important. There are some rests coming up in this second line that are easy to rush through, so don't. 2, 3, 1. So if we really pay attention to the rhythm and the pulse and those rests in that line, it sets us up really great to kind of reach that top D natural and not feel like we're kind of stumbling over ourselves. So the rhythm, having great rhythm, can also help you as a player feel more in control of the music, this very difficult music that you're trying to play. So this is one of the kind of infamous intonation spots here. Getting from that high D natural down to the F natural. Often that F natural is out of tune. Usually for me, I play it a little bit high. It may be different for you. But again, kind of here, I use that 8th note rest after the high D natural to actually set my left hand. So it's got both a musical purpose, right? You're kind of using it as a big breath, but also a technical one. It's allowing me to set that F natural so I give myself the best chance of playing that in tune. And also here, in terms of vibrato, it's really helpful to try to keep a narrow vibrato as much as possible. You don't want to be too wild because that will distort the intonation even more. And then as you come back down, it feels a little bit calmer. The same kind of thing, really paying attention to rhythm and the few bars leading up to rehearsal letter A. And then in this section, starting at A with these triplet runs, I like to, again, feel like I'm holding the tempo a little bit, not rushing forward, but also I want to create a line. So I'm just kind of going up with the line as it expands and then making a really big crescendo down to the bottom, both times that happens. In terms of stroke, I'm pretty much on the string. It should be articulate only to the point that it's clear and that there's clarity, but I'm thinking basically an on the string stroke. And whatever your fingering is, as much as possible, keep your shifts very clean here. That's the one for me that's tricky, and I really have to work to make that as clean as possible. but just have your ear out for that. Now, in these next few bars, trying to have an accent on every single note is really difficult. It actually helps me to think of staying kind of in the upper half of the bow for those first two beats, ya-dum-ba-dee, and focusing my attention mostly on accenting the little 16th note in each bar, because that's the one that will get lost if we don't focus on that. And again, the accents leading up to this kind of this triple forte here, it's also helpful to really play them because they help kind of keep the rhythm held. You don't want to go forward in this 3/4 bar. Sometimes it's easy to kind of rush through those, but really kind of, punch those out, good accents, good sound, and then when you reach the top, again, it's a sound thing. You want to feel open and glorious here. This next passage is probably the scariest one in this excerpt, just because it happens so fast and there are a lot of notes. So I thought it might be helpful to mention that when I'm playing these whatever it is, 4 bars, of course I've practiced the left hand a whole lot in different rhythms, working it up from slow to up to tempo. But in addition to having the left hand really solid, I'm actually shifting my attention in performance mode to the bow hand and the bow arm and what my bow is doing while my left hand's going crazy over here. And actually that helps when I kind of focus on the sound and playing with full bow hair. It really helps psychologically to kind of calm me down and kind of feel a little bit more in control. And it helps with the clarity of the passage as well. This is another passage that I think people often rush through because it's so terrifying to have to get up to the top. But if we just kind of, hold the tempo and focus on sound, it's much more enjoyable to play, and you can actually feel like you're in control of this part. So so I'm really kind of thinking that whole time of my bow contact and using as full hair as possible, and it really helps me. Now, in terms of fingerings, everyone's going to have their own fingering, but as a little tip, in passages like this, I try to keep shifting down to a minimum. So I stay in first position pretty much all the way until the last bar of the run, and then I essentially have what I would call 2.5 shifts only to get up to the top. So in that last bar of the run, I'll play slowly so you can kind of see what I'm doing as far as fingerings go. I'm in first position to start, and then I shift to third position on a 1. I do a little substitute fingering, so I shift to 3 on that G, and then I shift up to 1, and then I just use extensions to get up to the very top. So there are only 2 real shifts and then 1 kind of replacement shift. And that for me really helps kind of minimize risk in this section, and possibly that will be helpful for you as well. Now, moving on from here, I approach this next passage just like I would the very beginning. And for me, it works really well to play this in second position from the B flat. In terms of kind of the string crossings, I find that works the best. It's the clearest for me when I play it that way. And then again, with the rhythm and the accents in this coming phrase. And again, with those E's, let's think of beautiful sound. And when you come off the string, or if you play it up, it's fine too. You're kind of listening to the resonance and the ring, even after you come off of the string. Because no matter where you're playing, you want to be creating as beautiful of a sound as possible. So you may be in a beautiful hall playing this this excerpt, and so that's going to ring naturally. But you might also be in a very small room with a dead acoustic, and you want to give the impression of there being a nice acoustic in that space. So I kind of come off the string with a nice circular motion to allow the sound to keep spinning. Following that, we have lots of contrasting dynamics here. So a beautiful pianissimo, followed by a really big fortissimo, sing out, and then same approach as the beginning again. And this last section is very tricky. Again, focusing on your tempo to not rush these little triplet figures. It can feel like you're on your tiptoes and you're stumbling over yourself if you don't hold the tempo there. It's a lot slower than you think it is, especially in the moment, especially if you're nervous and adrenaline's pumping. Just hold the tempo there. I thought it might be helpful to share my fingerings in these last few lines. Again, my approach is always to minimize as many the shifts as much as possible. So we'll get a little closer to the camera so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So I'll start from the second line from the bottom on this G sharp here. So I start on the second finger, and then I shift to third finger on this F sharp, and then down to third position on a first finger on the A sharp, D natural is on a first finger, and then I shift down to the D flat on a third finger, okay, going on the C sharp, I basically stay in position, but the C sharp's on a second finger, then I shift down to third finger, and then the same pattern for the next phrase, starting that E on second finger, shift down to third finger on the E flat. Sorry about that. I'll play that one more time from the E natural. And then everything else in first position. Nice sound again coming off. So we'll just play that slowly one more time, kind of without stopping in between all of these shifts. self-explanatory. Okay, I think that's about all that I wanted to go over in this excerpt. Hopefully that was helpful for you. I hope you are able to take some things away from that and apply it to your own practice of this piece. Go forth, happy practicing, enjoy, and try to make music with this really fantastic piece of violin virtuosity. I look forward to seeing you next on An Excerpt a Day. Thanks so much.